Good. So here, okay, so last week we discussed about the history of HIV virus, and we had done part of that up to the year 1990 to the year 1999. So today we look at briefly from the year 2000 to date, some key things that have happened as far as the discovery of HIV and the drugs and the management are concerned since the year 2000. So as you can see there, in the year 2001, the developing countries were now given a leeway to manufacture generic drugs, generic medication. So basically here we are saying that up to the year 2000, the manufacture of the generic of the drugs for treatment of HIV or for management of HIV and AIDS were preserved for the developed world. But as at the year 2001, now the World Trade Organization had now accepted to give license to the developing countries such as Kenya, South Africa, to be able to manufacture the drugs. So I hope I am audible enough. I know you are not able to respond because you are muted, but in case you have something to say, then you can simply raise your hand or type it there on the chat, and then I'll be able to respond to it. Okay, so the year 2001, there was the World Trade Organization having a license operation for manufacture of generic drugs to the developing world. Then 2002, there was a discovery of the first rapid test. A rapid test is the kind of test that today, if you walk into any health institution or any testing site, and you are given that kit, or you see that kit, that small kit where the blood is drawn from the fingers of the heel, and then a few drops of blood are put into that, and then a gel is added, and then you wait for around 15 minutes or 20 to get the results. That's what we call rapid HIV test. The rapid test is one of the what we call serological tests in broader perspective. That is the test that involves the antigen-antibody kind of testing, where we are testing for either the antigen of the virus itself or the antibodies of the virus or that are produced by the body against the antigen produced by the virus. So we'll still look at the tests. In week 3, we'll be doing the tests so that we know what these tests entail. But at the moment, just know that the rapid test is one of the antigen-antibody kind of tests, or what we call serological test, and it is called rapid because it takes around 15 to 20 minutes. Prior to this, earlier, the test could take even as long as a week, because mostly the tests were done in batches, what we call batch testing. And that means the samples were collected from several people, and then like about 40 or even 90, and then they form a batch. Then they run them on what is called Western blot. But with the discovery of the rapid test, now the test could be done in record 15 to 20 minutes. Then the year 2006, we have the concept of reduction of transmission or control of transmission through male circumcision. I know this one is still an issue at the moment, But of course, the male circumcision is one of the areas that has been considered to be effective in reducing chances of transmission or chances of contracting the virus by around 60% for the males. So it basically reduces female to male transmission by about 60%. And if you were to dive into the reasons as to why it controls, then it has to do with, the nature. Of course, with the removal of prepuce, what we call prepuce or the foreskin, then there are reduction in chances of the cuts and bruises that automatically would result into increased chances or heightened chances of transmission. So that's the logic there. So as of 2006, the World Health Organization concluded that indeed male circumcision is one of the surest ways to reduce transmission by over 60%. Then as the time goes by, more discoveries were unearthed, and one of them, before you go to the other discovery of that microbicide, the next item, there is this 2010 thing. Like, I hope you can be able to see there. I think all of you are able to see. Prior to the year 2010, anyone having or diagnosed with HIV and AIDS was not allowed to step into the United States of America. That is up to 2010. But with the introduction of, with the Obama administration coming in, this restriction was lifted. And by 2010, now, those who are positive, HIV positive, were now allowed to step into the United States of America. And somebody has raised the hand, and somebody saying, okay, I can see. I hope I've seen the messages. Okay, good. So that is 2010. Then now 20. Now 2010 still, there was the approval of a microbicide. The microbicide was called Caprisa. And this microbicide is one of the prevention and control items that were approved in 2010. So Caprisa is a microbicide that was considered successful in reducing male to female transmission by 40%. In other words, this is a gel that is supposed to be prior to maybe engaging in sexual activity. It's supposed to be used by the female. It's supposed to be used by the female so that, like the way the name suggests, as a microbicide, it's supposed to ensure that every semen coming in, any microbe in the semen is killed. And so this is one of the ways of reduction of contraction of the virus by the females, from male to female. Then 2010 still, there are several things in 2010. You must have heard of one of the control mechanisms, control techniques called pre-exposure prophylaxis. So pre-exposure prophylaxis is one of the control procedures where a regimen of drugs, a combination of drugs is used prior to engagement in any activity that is likely to lead to contraction of the virus. So this drug combination, the PrEP, or the pre-exposure prophylaxis, it was approved in 2010. It was approved in 2010, and specifically, as of 2010, it was specifically meant for those men who have sex with men, or gays. Okay, so that is pre-exposure prophylaxis. Then we have 2011. Now, as of 2011, This is now about the antiretroviral treatment for serodiscordant couples. Serodiscordant couples are couples where one of them is negative and one of them is positive. So proper and continued and consistent use of antiretroviral treatment for such a couple, for the couple that is one of the couples that is infected, the chances of transmitting the virus to the other couple is minimal with proper use of antiretroviral treatment in a situation where the couples are serodiscordant. And now this discovery was made in 2011, is when this became apparent and clear that it is possible that if one of the couples is consistently and properly using the drugs, the antiretroviral drugs, then chances of transmitting the virus to the other couple is minimal, almost zero. Now, 2011 again was the approval of Complera. Now, Complera was another all-in-one fixed dose combination tablet. Remember, like back there, we said that there were several drugs that one was supposed to use to take when the person was suffering from the virus. But now, the idea of taking several drugs, it could lead to lack of adherence to the drugs, because somebody might get tired on the way. So an all-in-one fixed dose tablet was thought to be key in management, in general management of the taking of the antiretroviral drugs. And so Complera is a tablet, an all-in-one tablet that was meant to be used by the sick so that they don't have to use several drugs at once. So we have Complera, and that discovery was in 2011. Now, in 2012, that approval of PrEP, that pre-exposure prophylaxis, was now approved completely to be used to prevent sexual transmission of HIV. For example, if somebody maybe has had a rape case or somebody has been exposed, then that person is likely to be helped not to contact the virus by using the PrEP. Then in 2012, 2012 is a question of statistics, and as of 2012, there was now a huge reduction in the number of cases, in the percentage of cases that were now suffering from the virus. As at 2005, the peak of infections were in 2005. And just a minute, just hold on. Sorry. So I was saying that as of 2005, the peak of infection world over was in 2005. As of 2005, there were high number of persons that were suffering from the virus than any other year. So as of 2012, this percentage has gone down. The number of persons that were suffering from the virus had gone down by a whooping 30%. Okay, that is the main item of early 2012, as you can see there. Then still on 2012, based on statistics, as you can see there, it's basically statistics. And as at that, it was now discovered that about 35 million, estimated that about 35 million people were living with the virus world over. Okay, good. So I'm also trying to check on comments. If there is anyone that has got anything to write home about, then you can put it there so that I respond to it. 2015 is about the guidelines for proper use of antiretroviral treatment or antiretroviral drugs. So in 2015, the World Health Organization had issued new guidelines as far as the use of antiretroviral drugs is concerned. So that's what we have there. Nothing so much there. It's simply about the management of the disease using by proper use of antiretroviral drugs. And this one, of course, was in reference to CD4. We'll still learn a lot about this CD4 thing and all that. And so it was now being declared that consistent and proper use of ARVs or antiretroviral drugs for that matter is likely to increase the number of CD4 count, which are the cells that are supposed to counter the virus in our bodies. And so proper use, regardless of the time that the person starts, is enhanced for proper treatment. Then 2015 still is about statistics there. About 18.2 million people were now on antiretroviral drugs. About 18.2 million people are now on antiretroviral drugs, ART. This was a bigger number compared to what was there 5 years earlier. And of course, this proper use or this consistent and now increased use of ARTs or antiretroviral therapy posed a serious challenge. Now, there were challenges that were now emanating from this, and one of the challenges is the issue of drug resistance. You know, when we have a lot of drugs being used, of course, we know that these kind of diseases, such as the viruses, they mutate, and mutation leads to a situation where we have the drugs not effective, being not effective. So it's about the resistance of drugs. Okay, you'll give me 1 minute again. Then 2017 is the endorsement of UU, as you can see there, in full, undetectable and transmissible, undetectable and transmittable. Meaning that if there is proper and consistent use of antiretroviral therapy by somebody who has been tested to be positive, then at the end of it, this person can have his health regained to a situation that he or she is not able to transmit the virus to someone else. Because of the consistent use of ARTs or ARV for that matter, there will be less detection of the number of, of the virus in that person's blood, undetectable, less detection, because the ARV suppresses the virus, okay? And so if they suppress the virus to the level that now we are not able to detect the virus in that person's body, then it will not be transmitted. Just a minute. Sorry. So that's what we call UU and undetectable and transmittable. Okay, proceed. So far so good. As of 2017, that's when we have the major discoveries, and so to date is simply improvement on what has been discovered. And of course, that process of discovery of that process of production of the vaccine is an ongoing thing that at the moment is the key item in people's minds as far as HIV is concerned. Okay. Then statistics as 2021 here. These are now global statistics. On this page, we simply have global statistics, nothing much to talk about here. It's simply telling us how many are infected as at which year. So for example, you can see there, as at 2021, we have about 38.4 million people that are now living with the virus, okay? Among them are children, and that's about 2.7 million are children that are having the virus. So global prevalence there, you can see 0.8 among adults, and of course, most of these, around 25% of these people may not know that they have the virus. So in this slide, we simply have statistics, and we not have much to discuss there. So I want to still scroll down to highlight a few areas, then we go to week 2. So here we still have the statistics. You can see there the statistics. This is at 2017, but still it gives a general picture on what to expect as far as statistics are concerned. So we have the numbers there. So you can see East and Southern Africa. East and Southern Africa are the leading areas where the infection rate is very high. Then we have Western and Central Africa, 6.1, then followed by Asia and Pacific. Then we have West and Central Europe and North America following, then Latin America is following, then East and Central Asia, then the Caribbean countries, we have Jamaica, Panama, etc. Then we have the Middle East and North Africa, the Middle East and North Africa, the least, okay? The Arabs, the least infected. But as you can see, of importance is the Sub-Saharan Africa, where we have the East and Central, okay? East and Central Africa. East and Southern Africa, I mean, East and Southern Africa are the majority of the infected. Then there's statistics about new infections. I will not dwell much on that. But of course, on this slide, there is a distribution here of the rate of infections for special groups. So you can see sex workers about 3%, people who inject drugs about 8%, gay men and other men who have sex with men is around 18%, transgender women 1%. So transgender is somebody who is maybe, should I say, is a male, but is supposed to converting to female or something like that. Some would not identifying with the sex as at birth. It's what's called transgender, 1%. Then we have 18%, that is clans of sex workers, clients of sex workers and other sexual partners of key populations. And then the rest of the population are making 52%. So we have impact. We have impact of HIV, and here we have different categories of impact. We have global impact, and you can see there we have several points there. This one is self-read thing. You'll be able to read and able to understand. So we have global impact. You can see the points there on how the virus has impacted the global, has impacted globally. For example, there's decreasing life expectancy. There is overwhelming of healthcare systems. There is increasing number of orphans, okay, and negative impact on economic development. Those are some of the global impacts of HIV. Then we have impacts to individuals. Of course, as an individual that is suffering, that has been tested to be positive or maybe has been confirmed with having the virus, then that person, he or she, is also suffering in a way. And in this slide, we are simply highlighting the impact of the virus to an individual. As you can see there, we have illness and suffering as one of the impacts. We have shortened lifespan. We have loss of work and income. We have weakened integrity, etc. So we have several impacts there. Then we have impact to the family. Impact to the family that the person that is sick comes from. And of course, here is where the rubber meets the road, because here you find that over and above the fact that somebody is suffering from the virus himself, but now the ripple effect to the rest of the family is big, such that the home is burdened. Children are left to be orphans. Of course, there's even the household income has to be compromised, because maybe this person was a breadwinner, and now if the person becomes bedridden, then that family or that homestead will be having problems. So impact families is something that is very, very much alive here in Africa. And of course, as far as even in Kenya, this is one of the areas where there's a lot of focus here in Kenya, where you find that families are being left without the breadwinners, for example, or somebody who can control several aspects of the home, and the elderly are left to the children, okay, when the parents die early, etc. And then there is this area for public health and hygiene. So for public health and hygiene, basically, you know, hygiene and public health go hand in hand with any case of disease. And of course, because we're discussing a viral disease, and of course, we'll be also discussing other kind of disease, not only HIV, then public health and hygiene are very important. Some of these diseases, they come as a result of, they spring up as a result of poor health conditions, okay, or poor public health conditions. For example, corona, for example, is a result of poor public health, and of course, hygiene, general hygiene for many opportunistic diseases, and even sexual transmitted diseases. So you read that area as well of what is entailed in public health and hygiene, as well as community health. Good. So that is the summary of what we had for week 1. I wanted to rush through it so that we complete it, and we have time to do week 2. So allow me to share week 2, because that is the main item of the week. Allow me to share week 2. Allow me to share the item of week 2. So let me bring this one down. Good. So I hope you are able to see what's on the screen. I hope you are able to see what is on the screen. So for this one, I would request that you be attentive a little bit, because we have a lot to talk about here. It's a bit a technical area because it's very scientific. So you can see there the title. Yes, we can continue now. Now, in this area, we are going to be looking at some basic science about HIV or the virus itself. Just some basic science, not so deep, but it's very, very important that you listen keenly. Sorry for that interruption. I was attending to some issue. So we have the objectives here. Now the objectives here, you can see by the end of this class, should be able to describe the structure of HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, the structure. We are supposed to be able to describe this life cycle of HIV and the disease progression. We are supposed to be able to identify the various types of HIV and the subtypes there. Then we are supposed also to understand the basics of how the virus attacks the human immune system. It will come out. Then just a little bit on the CD4. Those are the areas that you're going to look at. Then we have the outline there. As you can see, we have the overview. We have the structure of the virus. We have the clinical stages of infection. Then we have types. And also we have some reason as to why HIV is evasive. Okay. So in the overview here, when we talk about HIV as a virus, there are several things that we need to understand. That viruses is the way on how viruses are formed. So we have the morphology of the virus, or the structure of the virus. So the virus, a virus can either be single-stranded or double-stranded. So the virus in question that we're talking about here is a single-stranded RNA virus. It's not a DNA virus. Viruses can either be RNA or they can be DNA. But HIV as a virus is an RNA virus, and it is single-stranded, which means the genomic system or the genome, what we call the DNA of the RNA is also called the genome. In this case, it can either have one strand or it can have a double strand. So in this case, HIV virus is a double-stranded virus. It's a single-stranded virus. Okay. And now in terms of classification, of course, for those who know basic biology, remember the taxons, okay, where we have the kingdom, the class, the genus, the family, etc. So viruses, of course, they are neither plants nor animals, but because they are neither living nor non-living, they are at the middle of living things and non-living things. We have to classify them. So the HIV virus is classified as the family Retroviridae. So the family is Retroviridae. The subfamily is Lentivirinae. The class is Retrovirus. Okay. And then the subgroup is called lentiviruses. Lentiviruses are those viruses that cause diseases slowly. Okay. So when you hear the word retrovirus, just know that's the class of a family called Retroviridae, where the HIV a virus that causes AIDS, belong to. Then something else that we need to understand is that this virus, it cannot replicate on its own. So because of that, it can only replicate in a cell. When it gets a suitable cell is when it can replicate. Okay. And this one, it attacks CD4 cells. Now, CD4 cells are the white blood cells that play a very important role as far as prevention of infections is concerned in our bodies. Okay. So once they attack the CD4 cells, of course, the CD4 cells are killed. We learn why they're called CD4, that one later. So once the CD4 cells are killed in the body becomes too weak to defend itself against other kind of illnesses, what we now call opportunistic infections, that now makes the person to become extremely sick and even dead. Okay. So you can see, now we go to the structure of HIV. So like we said, it's an RNA virus, which is single-stranded. So generally, for this one, there's something that I want to explain here, central dogma of biology. Basically, what it means is that our bodies are made up of genetic material called the DNA. Of course, in most animals and plants, the DNA is the most important genetic material, because it is what contains the genetic information that will make the next organism. However, some organisms, such as viruses, may contain RNA only as genetic material and not DNA. But for this virus, we say it's an RNA virus, which means that it does not have a DNA. As a result, for it to survive, when it enters into a cell, it must make copies of DNA, because DNA is what codes for information that will be useful to make new proteins, to make new organisms. So the RNA virus makes a copy of DNA of itself from its RNA. And there's a lot of science that is involved here, but I will not go to the deep end of that science. But basically, you remember from your simple biology classes that if you have a genetic material, for example, it's a DNA, or even it's an RNA, then we have some bases there. We call them nitrogenous bases that are used to make these DNA or RNA. So we have adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, you know those things. And in case of RNA, uracil instead of thymine. Okay. Now, in the process of making a copy of DNA, there's a way on how those bases pair up. Adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, you know. So those details I don't want to go there, but that's what happens, such that copies of DNA are made from the RNA. Then point number 2 is that the virus is spherical in shape. Of course, viruses come in different shapes. They come in different shapes. HIV virus is spherical in shape, as you can see there, and it is enveloped. It has got an envelope. Okay, we have the virus with its proteins and other parts, but over and above that, we have another layer of protein that encloses all the contents, and that's called an envelope. So the envelope contains glycoproteins. Glycoproteins are projections from the surface of the envelope. These projections are the ones that are responsible for reacting or interlocking with CD4 when it attacks the cells. Okay, the CD4, of course, has got the receptors that are able to get into contact with the glycoproteins or those projections on the surface of the virus. Glycoproteins may be basically, just to make it less technical, is that these are proteins that have got molecules of sugar added to them. Okay, proteins that has been modified by adding sugar to it, call it a glycoprotein. And so these are the projections that the surface of the spherical HIV virus has. Okay, their main importance or main function here is to lock with the CD4 cell when the virus attacks the CD4 cells, CD4 T cells, if you like, as well. Then inside the virus, there is a matrix. There is a matrix. Inside the virus, there is a matrix. There's a layer of protein just under the envelope. Then we have the core or the nucleus. The core or the nucleus as a cone-shaped structure called capsid. Again, we will not go to so much details of that, called capsid. And then this capsid contains enzymes, and these enzymes are very important as far as the life cycle of the virus is concerned. For example, we have an enzyme there called reverse transcriptase. This one is involved in forming of messenger RNA, which will now be coding for formation of proteins so that new viruses can be formed. That one later. Then we have integrase enzyme. This enzyme is useful when the viral DNA that has been made from the RNA is now being used to integrate or to fix the virus particle to the virus DNA to the DNA of the host cell. Then we have the protease enzyme. The protease enzyme is an enzyme that digests proteins, from what the name suggests there. And which proteins are these? Once a new virus has a long chain protein of new viruses have been formed, then they allow to be cut into smaller pieces such that they can form several viruses by assembly. So this enzyme called protease is the one that is responsible for that. We are going to see that in the next few minutes. Okay. Then we have the genes. The RNA, which is genetic material here, is made up of 9 genes. It is made up of 9 genes. So these 9 genes are responsible for several, they code for several functions in the virus itself. The 9 genes are responsible for several processes that take place in the virus. Okay. Good. Then, so that is the structure. I hope it is not so technical to understand. Sorry, just a minute. Okay. So I said if there is any comment, then you write it down, but I'm not seeing comments again. Okay. Okay. I hope you can hear me well. So you can see here, here is the structure. You can see here is the structure. I have the glycoproteins. You can see here the viral envelope. You can see there the capsid. You can see there. You can see the projection here. The enzymes are here, etc. Then let's now go to the life cycle. This life cycle is again very important so that we can be able to understand the interaction between the virus and the body itself. So we have several stages here. We have 5 stages. We have 5 stages. Stage 1 is called attachment and entry. Stage 2 is called reverse transcription. Stage 3 is called integration. Stage 4 is called transcription and translation. Stage 5 is called assembly and budding. Okay. So as you can see here, we are expected to understand how the virus interacts with cells. And basically, that's what forms the basis of the life cycle. Okay. So we have attachment and entry. So when HIV gains entry into a cell, the process of attachment and entry has 2 stages. There is attachment and fusion. Okay. And attachment here is brought about by the proteins of the coat. We say that the virus is enveloped, so that virus coat, the coat of the virus or the envelope, is what attaches to the CD4 cell. And we say that that envelope has got projections called glycoproteins. Now, these glycoproteins are able to interlock with the receptors of the CD4. Now, that interlocking is what we call attachment. Then on the entry side, once the interlocking has happened, then that virus envelope will be able to get into contact with the cell, with the wall of the cell that's attacking. So when it gets into contact with the wall of the cell, it fuses to it, and then from there, it will be able to enter into the cell. Okay? And as you can see here, we have several cells that are a target. We have several cells that are target, and these cells are called T lymphocytes or T cells. So the T lymphocytes are the white blood cells that are responsible for protection against various diseases. So T lymphocytes, you can see there. Others are monocytes. We also have macrophages and dendritic cells, or cells that have projections that look like dendrites. We'll be able to see illustration there. Then we have this point here for notes. Several types of antiretroviral drugs have been developed to block different stages of the process of attachment and entry. So why is it important to understand this? It is important to understand this because when we are looking at the drugs, for those ARVs or ARVs, then we realize that some of these drugs are simply meant to target a process, of the virus life cycle. And that is how all the drugs in question today are able to suppress the virus. They target and disrupt a process. So that statement is simply telling us that we have some drugs that have been developed that their main aim is to disrupt this process of attachment and entry, and therefore the virus will not be able to progress to new stages. Okay. So you can see here illustration. We have the CD4 cell here, but then the word CD4 is cluster of differentiation 4. We'll see how that one comes about. But of course, these are special cells called lymphocytes, the white blood cells, that again I've said are very, very important as far as fight against other infections are concerned. So you can see point number 1 here. The HIV attaches itself to the CD4 cell. So you can see this is a spherical HIV virus here with projections. The projections are the glycoproteins, like I said, and you can see them labeled right there. And then now these projections are able to interlock. They are able to interlock with the receptors of the CD4, as you can see there. And once that interlocking has happened, then the virus will use its envelope to attach itself for fusion to the walls of the CD4. And when that happens, it will release the capsid. It will release the capsid to the inner parts of the CD4, which is the cell of target. Okay? So when it releases the capsid, of course, other processes are going to follow. And that's the main aim of this stage, so that the virus can attach itself to the CD4 cell, the main cell of target, and then it releases the capsid in there with the genetic material. Then we have reverse transcription. So reverse transcription is simply a process where an RNA, we say it's an RNA virus, where an RNA converts itself into a DNA. So the DNA is called proviral DNA or complementary DNA, if you like, complementary DNA. Allow me to correct this. Copy the complementary DNA. Okay, copy DNA before it can be integrated. So that process of conversion of RNA to DNA is what is called reverse transcription. Why is it important? It is important because only if we have the DNA is when the virus will be able to integrate itself into the DNA of the host cell. Now, this process is aided by one of the enzymes that we said is found in the core, on the nucleus of the virus. And that enzyme is called reverse transcriptase enzyme. So the reverse transcriptase enzyme is the one that's responsible for conversion of RNA into DNA. Again, here, some enzymes have been developed, some drugs, ARVs have been developed to stop the reverse transcription process. So some antiretroviral therapy drugs have been developed to stop the reverse transcription process by, of course, by interrupting the process of reverse transcriptase, the enzyme that's responsible for this process. So here you can see the illustration. You can see the illustration. We have the HIV RNA here, and you can see there is process of formation of HIV DNA in a process that is called reverse transcription. The reverse transcription process is catalyzed by enzyme reverse transcriptase. Okay. The process is sped up by an enzyme called reverse. Then we have integration. Then we have integration as another step in the life cycle of the virus. Now, what is integration? Remember, we said that the virus converts itself into a proviral DNA, and when that happens, that DNA has to be fixed somewhere. That DNA, the proviral DNA or the complementary DNA or copy DNA, if you like, that has been found from reverse transcription. That now that DNA has to be fixed to the DNA of the host cell. CD4 cell that we're talking about, its DNA is going to be interfered with. How? Because the DNA of the virus is going to be fixed on the DNA of the host cell, and that process is called integration. That's what is called integration. Okay. Now, this integration process is enhanced by an enzyme called integrase enzyme. It's catalyzed by an enzyme called integrase enzyme. The integrase enzyme is found again in the core of the virus. We said that we have several enzymes there. One of them is integrase enzyme. Okay. Now, once integration has taken place, the cells that now have the DNA of the virus integrated in them are called latently infected cells. Meaning, these cells are going to be dormant for some time. Of course, they have the virus. They have the viral DNA in them, but they are inactive. They'll be waiting to become active when they are induced. Okay, because of the presence of the maybe the antigens produced by the virus. So these cells are now going to be referred to as latently infected cells. Latently infected cells. They're called latent cells because they already have the proviral DNA integrated to the DNA of those cells. Again, here we have some of the antiretroviral therapy or drugs have been developed that are aimed at disrupting the process of integration, and so we call them integrase inhibitor drugs. Integrase inhibitor drugs. The phrases that are highlighted there in italics are simply illustrating that. So you can see here the illustration of the process of integration. You can see here we have the cell, the CD4 cell, and of course you can see the DNA of the CD4 cell. So the green stuff here is the CD4. Then the white ring you are seeing here is the CD4 DNA or the host DNA. Now, this arrow you are seeing is illustrating the HIV DNA. Remember now the HIV DNA from its RNA it had been copied into DNA. And so now we have the HIV DNA. And what is happening here? The integrase enzyme attaches itself to one of the ends of the HIV DNA, then it leads it to fix itself or to integrate itself, for that matter, to the host DNA. That's what is happening there. So that's the process of integration. Then we have transcription and translation. Like I said, this area is a bit technical. I said this area is more of science, and the topic is the science of the virus. So, of course, a lot of things that we'll be learning here. There are a lot of technical terms here, But of course, that is the beauty of learning, because you are now having something new that oh, somebody's asking. And the host cell, somebody's asking about the host cell. Let me illustrate. The host cell are the cells that are attacked by the virus. And which cells are these? They are CD4 cells. CD4 means cluster of differentiation. That's how the cells are defined. Number 4. Sometimes they're called T lymphocytes because they are producing thymus gland. Thymus gland is a gland that's below the breastbone. They're called thymus gland. Okay. So those CD4 are the target, are the host cell. And then we have, now the CD4 nucleus. Somebody is asking, what is CD4 nucleus? The CD4 is a cell. And a cell generally has got a nucleus. The nucleus has got the genetic material of the DNA. Okay. So a cell has a nucleus. CD4 is a cell. And that cell is called so because of where it is. I mean, what is describing it? The things on its surface. Cluster of differentiation, number 4. We'll still illustrate that. What's meant by the term CD4? CD4 is cluster of differentiation, number 4. Again, I repeat, cluster of differentiation 4. Another name for this is T lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are white blood cells, but mostly located in the lymphatic system. Okay, they are called lymphocytes. T is for the word, if you call it T lymphocytes, for the word thymus. Thymus gland. No, thymus gland is one of the glands, secretory glands in the body. It's normally found below the sternum or the breastbone. Oh, people are so confused with CD4. I think I've explained it again. I think I've explained CD4, so you'll be able to now understand. So when I say CD4, please you understand. Yeah, somebody saying we don't take biology. I think you know why you're doing the course. The course is not for you to be a biologist. The course is for you to understand the HIV virus. You will not be able to understand how it attacks the body without understanding the process. The process involves a lot of biology, and that is why you cannot learn it without touching something on its biology. This is for Bill Egerton. Then Kate Wambulewa, you are saying, so if asked to give the structure, do you give the step by step as you showed us? No. The structure is what we have, things like envelope, capsid, that area where we're talking about the structure, okay? The genes, the 9 genes, etc. But this one, the area that we're doing now, we are simply looking at the overview of the process of life cycle, the life cycle of the virus. And this life cycle, it goes hand in hand with infection. In other words, how does it infect the body? So we are simply describing how the virus infects the body, and that's about the life cycle. Okay? Then somebody saying has never stepped in biology class. Good. Eh? And somebody is doing a degree course, then I know you understand well. You have to be all able to understand any concept. Oh, somebody can hear me correctly. That's good. You asked the question I never answered. Which question is this? What is the meaning of CD4 cell? I now answered that, Uma Cynthia. The notes are in PDF. The notes are in PDF. They are in the LMS system. Yeah, today it is purely biology. You know that. Oh, we are getting the content right. Biology 3 mode. Somebody Bill Egerton. Sasa mtu kama mimi hizi stuff zitanisaidia wapi? Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, see. Your voice is cutting. I think I'm clear now. Oh, so okay, let's continue. I think I've sampled a few questions. I'll check on more when kufanya biology. Anyway, tunasikia ni CD4. All right. So let's proceed. Let's proceed now. So we have stage 4, and that is transcription and translation. There are two things here. I will define each of them separately. Transcription is the process of formation of something called messenger RNA. In the process of formation of a new organism, it starts with the DNA. The DNA forms a messenger RNA. The messenger RNA forms proteins. The proteins form organisms. Now, in this case, we have a proviral DNA that has been formed by reverse transcription. Now, that DNA will have to be converted into RNA. Now, not viral RNA, or the original one, but this is a messenger RNA for the formation of proteins so that new viruses can be formed. Okay? Now, this one is enhanced by another enzyme called RNA polymerase. However, this RNA polymerase is not from the virus itself. This is an enzyme from the host cell. So the virus uses the host cell enzyme to make messenger RNA. The enzyme is called RNA polymerase. Okay. Then the other term there is translation. Now, what is the meaning of this? Translation is the process where the messenger RNA formed is now used to code for proteins or various parts of the organism. Not necessarily the virus in this case, but generally for new organisms to form, the messenger RNA formed has to code for new proteins that will now, assume it's a human being. Now the new proteins for maybe the skin color, the hair, the what, all that. Now in this case, we have sorry, the messenger RNA for the virus. That messenger RNA will be used to code for new proteins because we want to make new viruses. I hope I'm making myself clear. So the messenger RNA will provide instructions for making new viral proteins, okay, in a process called translation. Now, when translation happens, the result is formation of long-chain proteins called long-chain polypeptide. Polypeptide is a series of proteins. Now that most of us are not biologists, so I'll be making it simpler as much as possible. So the long-chain proteins, polypeptide, we are going to form several viruses from there, viral proteins from there, of course. So that other enzyme that we said is also found in the nucleus called protease enzyme. That's also found in the core called protease enzyme. That enzyme is going to be responsible for chopping off the long chain polypeptide to smaller viral proteins, to shorter viral proteins. Why? Because the shorter viral proteins are the ones that are going to be reassembled to form new viruses. I hope I'm making myself clear. Before starting, I said that this area is going to be a little technical, and so you need to be very attentive so that you capture the key points. So the protease enzyme is to cut the long chain HIV proteins into smaller chains so that we can have several new viruses being formed. That happens using protease enzyme, one of the enzymes found in the capsid of the virus. Remember, we have also some viruses here that are not we have some enzymes here that are not viral enzymes, but the enzymes of the host cell. One of which is RNA polymerase. Don't forget, RNA polymerase is not one of the enzymes found in the core, but this is an enzyme from the host cell, the CD4. Then we have illustration here of transcription and translation. So you can see we have number 6. Where you see number 6 there, we have translation taking place. So we have the HIV DNA now forming the messenger RNA. You can see there. You can see now the blue, the dark blue from the orange Orange is the HIV DNA. Now it is forming the messenger RNA. Remember, the HIV DNA is part and parcel of now the host cell DNA. The green cycle is the host cell DNA. Okay, now the messenger RNA, mRNA, they are formed. You can see now, go to number 7. In number 7, we have the messenger RNA now forming proteins in a process called translation. Number 6 is showing transcription. Number 7 is showing translation. So the messenger RNA is now forming the viral proteins. You can see a long chain protein there, polypeptide translation process. Now, assembly and budding. Assembly and budding. Now, once the long chain proteins have been formed, what will happen? They have been cut into smaller proteins, chain proteins by the protease enzyme. So what next? The next thing is that the newly formed protein chains will reassemble to form new viruses. They will reassemble to form new viruses at the wall, at the cell wall, let me call it the cell membrane of the host cell. Okay? They'll be assembling there. So they assemble at the wall of the host cell. Why? Because they're going to form new viruses. They assemble there and then metamorph or modify into new viruses. Again, here you can see NB. HIV protease inhibitors are designed to block the activity of protease enzyme. So we also have a class of ARVs called protease inhibitors. Their main work is to target and disrupt the process of the working of the protease enzyme so that new viruses are not formed. Remember, I said all the viral drugs have got a particular target in the life cycle of the virus. So another class of drugs called protease inhibitors, and you'll get to learn this as we proceed, that this area is very important for you to understand even the way those drugs called ARVs work. Somebody's raising her or his hand. Let me see. Okay. So some people are not seeing the screen. Some people are not seeing the screen. Now, it appears some of you are not hearing me, and I think maybe you need to check on your microphones. Okay. Okay, so let us proceed. So now at the assembly and budding, two things. Assembly, we are having the small chain proteins following the action of the protease enzyme, assembling to form new viruses. Then there is a process called budding. Budding is where the virus that has been formed protrudes from the walls of the host cell. Budding is where the process where the virus that has been formed protrude from the walls of the host cell. Okay, forming a bud, which will drop off thereafter to form a new virus completely, independent virus completely. Okay, so that's the process of budding, where the new virus protrudes on the walls of the host cell and then drops off to form a completely new infectious and independent virus. We call that process budding. And during that process, when the virus leaves the host cell, it draws lipids. It draws lipids from the host cell, and these lipids are the ones that will be used to form the surface glycoproteins. Remember, the surface glycoproteins are very, very important for the first step of infection. That is, for interlocking to the CD4 cells, all right, to the host cell. I think those are the key points you need to take from there. It picks lipids, it draws lipids from the host cell membrane to form its own glycoproteins. Again, here we have drugs that are meant to stop that maturation process, and they're called maturation inhibitor drugs that are meant to block the cutting of the protein that is needed to produce mature viruses. So you can see here illustration. This illustration can help you pick something. For those who are struggling to understand, you can see there we have number 9. We have the CD4. Let me begin from number 8 inside the host cell. In number 8, you can see protease enzyme chopping off the long chain protein molecules, forming new HIV proteins. Then the new HIV proteins, they assemble at the wall of the host cell to form new viruses. Now, the new viruses protrude on the outside wall of the host cell. They form a bud. So you can see a bud. That hanging number 9. You can see a new virus with these projections. And then number 10, you can see now a free virus particle, a free viral particle that has now detached itself from the host cell. It has detached itself from the host cell and is now a complete virion that is able to infect other cells, mature, ready to infect other cells. That's what we call a simply a body. Good. So we are through with the process of life cycle, the life cycle of the virus. We are through with that. Now we have the clinical stages of infection. Another very interesting area, the clinical stages of infection. Now, before I go to that, let me check on the comments one more time to see if there is something I need to respond to. Let me go back to the comments. Yeah, content. Somebody's claiming there's a lot of content. Good. You know, now you know. No, some people are struggling. I hope you're able to see the screen. Or they're just comments. Oh, you are saying the unit does not help you. Maybe you don't understand Bill Egerton. Maybe you don't understand. Maybe you're in a wrong class. Bill Egerton, you could be in a wrong class because this is a common unit. A common unit, you'll get to learn that it touches on real life aspects outside there, especially when you do the other topics of the unit. You may not be understanding this because you are doing another course, maybe a physical course. But of course, there's a reason as to why this unit is taught. By the way, you know, this course is not just for passing exam. Maybe some of you think that we're doing the course just for passing exam. No. This course is to help you understand the dynamics of infections around you in the world of today. HIV just being one of them. It's meant to help you have some behavior change ideas, help manage people or help people that are already infected, okay? And those who may be infected, so guidance, okay? So the exam is just one of the aspects, but that is not the overriding factor for such a unit. Such a unit is a life-changing unit. And of course, I know you will get to understand what I'm trying to say. All right, so let's proceed. There are so many comments there. There are so many comments there, but I know you are picking something. As much as things are tough here, like you are saying, somebody's asking, how did the virus transmit from animals to humans? Of course, during the interaction with animals, not necessarily through sexual intercourse, not through bestialism, of course. You could find that there's contact with contaminated blood. So you open up your mind and think broadly. For example, suppose you're handling an animal and then there are cuts and there are blood and everywhere, there could be contact with contaminated blood. But the bottom line, or the overriding factor is the conspiracy theory about the source of the virus is that it originated from chimpanzees. It originated from some animals from the DRC. That is the overriding factor there. As to how, there are so many factors you can think of. Yeah, somebody's asking, this is my Siba Davin. If one has sex with HIV positive person, can he or she get cured before 72 hours? Yes. Now, allow me to complete the work for today. Then I come back and answer all the questions. Okay? I hope we are in agreement. So allow me to complete, then I'll come back. Now, there are 3 stages of infection. We have primary, or what's called acute infection. We have chronic infection. Then we have AIDS. These are stages of infection. Now, this illustration here, primary infection is for about 2 weeks following exposure. So before exposure, you can see here, somebody's blood is clean. The first bottle here, before HIV infection, the blood is clean. Now, acute infection is immediately after infection. You can see there are some viruses that are attacking the cells. The cells here have reduced, the large cells, the white blood cells have reduced in number, you can see, and the viral particles are increasing in number. Okay, that's acute infection. The number of white blood cells reduced. The number of virus particles increased, the red ones. Now, chronic infection, we have stages of chronic infection. This one can take a long period of time. So we have 3 bottles there representing chronic infection. Now, what does this mean? Immediately after acute infection, the number of HIV particles will decrease significantly. And the number of white blood cells, there could be minimal change, or they could increase in number. You can see here 5, here 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They could even increase, but not to the level where it was before the infection. Bottle number 4, we have now the number of white blood cells has reduced. However, the number of viral particles are now increasing. That means the CD4 cells are dying. Bottle number 5, very few CD4 cells, number 2, but the number of viral particles has greatly increased, as you can see there. Then in bottle number 5, illustration number 5, you can see there's only one cell remaining, the CD4 cell remaining. But now we have several viral particles in the body, meaning the person is overwhelmed now by the number of viral particles in the body. And this person is a person that can easily die within 3 years if no proper treatment is laid down to such a person. Okay? So those are the stages of infection, and now we have them explained here into details. Yeah, just write your points. I will respond to them once I'm through. I'm not responding to them till I complete. So we have primary or acute infections. So first of all, you need to understand that the virus enters the body and it will infect CD4 cells. CD4 cells are the white blood cells called T lymphocytes that are mostly found in the lymphatic system, and they are the target of the virus. So how does the virus get into the body and to the CD4? It will get through the mucous membranes of the vagina or rectum. We're not mentioning here modes of transmission, but how it enters the body. Through the mucous membranes of the vagina or the rectum, so you understand what that means, or through direct infection of the CD4 cells or T cells, that is through the bloodstream. So that's why we have the contact with contaminated blood, either through injection, through cuts, etc. So that is direct infection, which means the virus goes to the blood direct. But through the mucous membranes, from the walls of the vagina or the mucous membranes of the vaginal walls or the rectum, that may not be so direct to the bloodstream. But all in all, these are avenues on how the virus enters the body. By the blood, so direct to the bloodstream, if there is contact with contaminated blood. Through the mucous membranes, such as the vaginal lining or the rectum, of course, when there is sexual intercourse and the semen or the vaginal fluids have got the virus. What happens then? Now, for somebody who was asking whether somebody can be treated within 72 hours, yes. Look at point number 2. At this stage, pre-exposure prophylaxis using antiretroviral drugs can prevent HIV infection if it is taken consistently. Good. And I said the pre-exposure prophylaxis are those drugs that are taken before engaging in any activity that can lead to infection. Then also we have post-exposure prophylaxis with the 3-drug antiretroviral combination. This one can prevent infection within 72 hours after exposure. Meaning, somebody has engaged in an activity, for example, sexual intercourse, which is thought to be risky. Taking post-exposure prophylaxis drugs should be able to control the contraction of the virus if it is used within 72 hours. Okay. Now, point number 3 is still on the process on what happens. So once the virus is inside the body, it will first be encountered by dendritic cells, the cells that have got projections on their surfaces, in simple terms. It will be encountered by those cells, which will transport the virus to the lymph nodes. I want you to understand that point well. The dendritic cells will transport the virus to the lymph nodes. Remember, the lymph nodes is where we have the lymphatic. We have the lymphocytes, which are the main targets of the virus, because it is the lymphocytes, the CD4 or the T lymphocytes, where the virus will do its dirty work by, first of all, converting itself into proviral DNA, then integrating that DNA into the DNA of the host cell on that lymphatic or that lymphocyte. So it is transported there by dendritic cells. Any cells with projections that are able to pick the virus particles, they transport them to the lymph nodes. When the virus arrives at the lymph nodes, of course, taking around 48 hours after exposure, they activate the immune cells, the CD4 lymphocytes, which of course are the primary targets found in the lymph nodes. So once they get there, they begin to replicate. In the lymph nodes, they begin to replicate. And this is acute infection. We have several things here. At this stage, the virus is not detectable in the blood. So it means about that 72 hours, it's not possible to detect that somebody has been infected by just testing the blood through antibody antigen test. However, this test can be done in a different way by what is called biopsy or taking the tissue directly from the lymph. It's called tissue biopsy. So the acute infection lasts between 7 to 21 days. It lasts between 7 to 21 days. And during that period, is what we are saying, that it is difficult to test the virus using the conventional antigen antibody testing strategies. Okay. So we have 7 to 21 days. Take note of that. Okay. So it's advisable that that can be proper treatment that is started at this time, as early as now, immediately following infection, can help to prevent the spread. Not control, but can help prevent the spread. Remember, not the first 72 hours. After 72 hours, proper antiretroviral drugs being used as supplement to prevent further spread of the virus, further replication of the virus in the body, and the destruction to the immune system. Okay. Of course, after several weeks now, it will be easy to detect the virus in the body through viral load test. After several weeks, above 21 days, it will now be possible, above 21 days, now be possible to detect using viral load test, or what is called virologic test. A test that means we are looking for the virus particles directly in the blood. Don't confuse this with the common tests, the antigen antibody test. Those are two different things. When talk about viral load test or virological test, is a test that uses, for example, nucleic acid test, that we are targeting to see or to find the virus particles in the blood. So that one means immediately after the first few months, maybe below 3 months now, but more than 21 days, below 3 months, but more than 21 days, we can use virologic testing. All right. Point number 2, bullet number 2 in this slide is that at this point, people may begin to experience symptoms of acute infection. And it can come once, then it disappears. Now, acute infection has got the following symptoms. Number 1, fever. You feel sick. Number 2, body rash, some small rashes, which will of course disappear. Then swollen glands, among others. Now, swollen glands is where we have, now the lymphatic system is a bit swollen. It means something is not right. So also it's important to remember that these symptoms are not always common to everyone, but of course they happen during acute infection. And the symptoms can last for up to 2 weeks. Symptoms of acute infection can last up to 2 weeks. Bullet number 2 on this slide is that viral load reaches its peak at this time and may measure above 1 million copies per milliliter of blood. Now, viral load simply refers to the number of viral particles per 1 milliliter of blood. The number of viral particles per 1 milliliter of blood. During acute infection, it can go up to above 1 million per ml of blood, as you can see there. Quite a big number. Now, the CD4 cells, those cells that are being attacked by the virus, they will begin to decline at this time. Okay? And the chances of transmission, well, last point, the chances of transmission of the virus to other people is very high at this time. And you get to learn why. The chance of transmission is very high at this time. Okay? Because the viral particles are so much in the blood, in the semen, and in the vaginal fluid. Remember, this is the first few months before the 3rd month, sometimes up to 6 months, depending on somebody's immune system. At around 3 to 4 weeks after infection, HIV antigen, which is called P24, it will be now detectable, which means we can now start doing what is called serological testing, antigen antibody tests. But of course, when you're testing the antigen directly, called P24, within 3 to 4 weeks after infection, it can detect. Okay? Remember, this one, when you go to test today, the kind of tests we have there for antibody tests, they cannot detect within this time. That's why it's always advisable to test at least twice before you start engaging, or maybe when you want to get married, for example. You need to test first time, wait for 3 months, test again. Then from there, maybe you can give benefit of doubt that your partner is clean. Okay, good. So as we are saying, at 3 to 4 weeks, we can have antigen test or 4th generation antigen antibody test, which means that's a high level. We try to learn about this later. And antigen, some tests that can test both antigen and antibodies, but it's 4th generation, high level, of course. They can show positive results. But of course, the surest way here is to do virologic test. We are looking for the viral particles itself in the blood. Within a further 4 to 8 days, that is after acute infection, that is after 3 to 4 weeks, for example, after 3 to 4 weeks following exposure, 4 to 8 days later, an antibody-only test can now show that there's a virus. But from there, the viral RNA levels will begin to fall in the blood, and CD4 levels will begin to rise again. That is after acute infection, the number of viral particles will come down while the CD4 cells will go up. Don't go to the level that it was prior. Then at around 6 months, the viral load and CD4 cell levels will stabilize at a level known as set point. That happens at around 6 months. At around 6 months, the number of viral particles and the CD4 cells are at a set point, a point where they're almost stable. No increasing, no decreasing in a significant way. Then we have chronic infection. This one I'll summarize now. You can see the numbers going down. Now, for chronic infections, this is where we have now the asymptomatic phase of infection. At the asymptomatic phase of infection, what does it mean? It means at this time, we are through with acute infection, and so the person will appear normal. Meaning, there will be no significant symptoms to write about. However, that person is continuing to have the viral particles multiplying in his or her body if there are no treatment being undertaken, and the number of CD4 cells declining and declining and declining. Okay? This phase can take a long period of time, even 10 years or so. And this is the stage when somebody might think, oh, I'm good, I'm okay, not knowing that that person is a carrier. Okay? However, as the time goes by, during the chronic infection, remember I said that the CD4 cells will keep on coming down, even though it's a symptomatic phase. So they will come down to a level where they may get to below 200 cells per milliliter of blood. When the CD4 cells goes to below 200 cells per milliliter of blood, that person will now be prone to opportunistic infections or other co-occurring conditions. That is when now AIDS as a stage will set in. When now this disease, other diseases come in, the body will be too weak to control itself, to defend itself, because its soldiers, the CD4, will have been killed mostly to below 200 per ml of blood, and so that body will be too weak to defend itself. As a result, several co-occurring conditions will now be dropping in, and the person will now be having AIDS. However, you can see there in italics, continued and proper use of HIV drugs to a level that it becomes undetectable will definitely restore the CD4 count, and the person will regain his or her health significantly. So it's always advisable that during the chronic phase, for somebody who knows his or her status, it's important to undergo CD4 cell count test and viral load test to monitor the progress of the disease and maybe proper treatment regime. Then the final stage here is AIDS stage. At this stage, the CD4 cells are below 200. Okay? And this is a stage that I said is characterized by several opportunistic infections, including tuberculosis, pneumonia, among others. It's the final stage, and this person can only live for about 3 years before that person dies if there is no proper recourse that is taken. Okay. Chances of transmission are very high here. Again, take note of that. So we are almost completing, ladies and gentlemen. So hold your horses so that I go through your questions and answer them. Now, types of the virus. There are 2 types of HIV virus. There is one called HIV type 1, and there is another one called HIV type 2. There is type 1 and there is type 2. Okay. So type 1 is the most common one. Type 1 is the most common type. Type 2 is little common, is less common, and little is known about it. However, in terms of similarities and the disease progression, they are almost similar. Even modes of transmission, okay, and opportunistic infections that accompany them are near similar. However, type 2 appears to progress slowly and is not as devastating as type 1. But most importantly, the key point here is that it appears to progress slowly. That is type 2. And this type 2 is mostly found in West Africa and in countries related to West Africa. For example, the French colonies. The French colonies like West African countries, and also other countries related to the West Africa. For example, the Portugal, they also have colonies in West Africa. Angola, Mozambique, Brazil, and India. So these are areas where type 2 is more localized. Okay? But type 1 is the most common and it is universal, occurring in several geographical areas as compared to type 2. And it's important to know that both type 2 and type 1 can affect someone at the same time. They can affect someone at the same time. As you can see breakdown here in this slide, we have the breakdown of areas where we find subtype 1 and type 2. Subtype 1, you can see the subtype 1, most common. Okay, type 1. So we have subtypes of type 1. You can see areas where we have it common. So subtypes. So we have type 1, subtype A, type 1, subtype B, like that. So you can see those areas distributed. And if I may ask, where do we fall here? Is it subtype C or subtype D? Okay, you can tell. You can tell where we fall as Kenya. Now we are completing, and there is just one small bit here. Why is HIV evasive? So why is it evasive to treatment? In summary, it is not easy to treat it with the many drugs because of the fact that it forms its DNA. This DNA is integrated into the host cell DNA. And once it's integrated into the host cell DNA, the cells become latent. In other words, the cell becomes sleepy, but they're sleepy with an infection already on them. And so in that case, they continue to pass the virus to the next cells where they form a reservoir of HIV infected cells. And so it becomes very difficult for the drugs to target these cells and eliminate them. When you take your time to read that, you'll be able to understand it well. Now, allow me to respond to some Other questions here? Okay. Allow me to check. Oh, check at the participants. Bill Egerton, what are you trying to say? Let's end there, sir. We are exhausted. Please. Okay, we are ending now. That is Shabin. We are ending now. But get time to read this. And please read well, because you can see this topic is a bit technical. And of course, you can expect many questions to come from it during the CAT, for example, and the main exam. So take your time to read and read between the lines. One more time. Lisa, careful to overwhelm. You cannot understand anymore. Okay. I've had. Is there any other significant question? Please show the slide of the first page. I'll show the slide of the first page. Let me ask there. This is for Daisy Kemunto. That is first page, Daisy Kemunto. The title is there. Is it true that is it true, or is it true that people with blood group O cannot get affected by HIV? No, it is not true. It's not true, Afula. Why is it that most of the symptoms of acute HIV aren't experienced by most people? Please explain, sir. It depends again on the immune system. Some people have got strong immune system that eliminates the mild fever, the mild headache, the mild rashes. So it depends on the immune system again. So it's not common. Human beings depend on, okay, somebody is replying to, okay. Human beings depend on hunting and gathering. It was by this interaction, eating raw meat, good, fresh meat, that the virus was transmitted to humans. Thank you. Professor Pius, you're on point. Is it true that invented vaccine is able to cure? Invented? No, the vaccine is not curing. The vaccine is simply meant to control entry. But of course, the HIV vaccine is not yet 100% effective. It's still on trial. What is the relationship between HIV and TB? Good question, Brenda. HIV and TB are like conjoined twins. Meaning, if you have HIV and it reaches a point where your CD4 count is below 200 cells per cubic millimeters of blood, chances of having TB is high. Everyone might be having a TB at the moment, but it's called latent TB, latent tuberculosis. So the latent tuberculosis, when the immune system becomes weak, the latent tuberculosis become real TB, and that is the nexus, that is the connection. It becomes infectious TB when the CD4 cells go down below 200 per milliliter of blood, which of course normally happens when it gets to end stage. So when it gets to end stage, where we have the cells, meaning the CD4 cells below 200 cells per cubic millimeters of blood, that person, if there is latent TB, that is TB that is inactive in his or her body, that TB will become active. Okay? Acute angle infection, good, okay. Does it mean that if HIV is detected earlier and treated, one cannot get the AIDS? Yes. Not transmit, not get the AIDS, but transmit. That one may not transmit the AIDS. Good question. Somebody is saying, what you mean? Kissing in a transmitted HIV, no, unless there are wounds in the mouth or bleeding gums, and the receiver of the kiss is also having wounds in the mouth and bleeding gums. Isn't it protect? No. Is it real that there are some blood groups in which When one is tested for HIV, the results become negative, yet the person is positive. No. Seven hours when any member. No, they're not related. But 72 hours. Rectum, yes, rectum. 6 months, yes, 6 months for proper antibody test to happen. After how long does, okay, 72 hours. After how long does one know that he or she has HIV/AIDS? 72, after 72 hours, if it's done using virologic tests, I'd explained that. What are some of the animals having HIV/AIDS so that we avoid them? Because somebody is saying human beings, eh? Yeah, human beings. No, for chimpanzees and gorillas, it was a theory, not yet proven beyond reasonable doubt. Cat will be after week 6. I said that when we started. What are some of the animals having? Okay, somebody has explained that. You did take by in high school, no problem. Yeah, I put Nick Nixon, please assist us by putting notes for every week at the portal earlier. Yeah, I did that early enough. Maybe did not get access to it. I normally do it like 2 to 3 days earlier. Yeah, the next topic will be easier to understand. Somebody says that I hope the next topic will be easier to understand. I think so. I think my speed was not that bad. Anyamba Richard, the speed was not that bad. Lilian Onjala, thank you. Getting me loud and clear. Oh, don't give us two. This is Martin Baraza. No, it depends on how you work on your reading. Eh? You want to get any supplementary, but if you joke around, this unit can harass you. Haruna, Idi, yeah, it is real and there's no cure good. The content is flowing. Thank you. If one had sex with a positive person, can he or she get cured before? Yes, I'd say that. I think I'd answered every question. So I think that's all. Now, for those who are still there, thank you for being patient. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Next time, same time, I will try to upload early enough, just like I did for this one. So I hope you will be able to read in advance. Thank you very much. The lesson is ended. Does saliva contain the virus? No. Yeah, there is some drugs that can suppress the AIDS. Somebody is asking. Yeah, I shared the notes on the e-learning platform. Juma Dolphin, your question is good. There are people who are not affected by the virus, by the AIDS they carry, but of course, somebody else that receives it from them can be put down so much. T, Bernard Tito, replying to sir, reply. Okay, please explain. T, I think you wanted to ask. I didn't get it well. Yeah, true. Some people fail to get the virus after having sexual intercourse. Very, very possible. We learn that later. For those not taking medicine, explain to us the use of meal Egerton again. Bill Egerton, I'll talk about this next week again so that we're on the same page. Groups at risks, we'll still explain that. We have a whole topic about that. Yeah, you can be treated, Bruce, you can be treated within 72 hours if you're infected. Two types, 1 and 2, good. Kuna notes. Two groups at high risks. We have a whole topic about that, but of course we have those who inject themselves with drugs and men who have sex with men. Okay. Between type 1 and type 2, which one is more dangerous? In terms of progression, type 1 progresses very fast, so I think it's more dangerous in that context. But both of them have got the same symptoms and the same opportunistic infections. The best test is what is called serological, biologic test. We'll do that next week. Next week is about tests. Very, very important. Don't miss. So goodbye, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Bernard Kipto. Thank you, Haruna Idi. Bye. The best medicine, Lewis. Lewis Imparambamba. The best medicine to prevent HIV/AIDS is the best medicine. It's about taking care of oneself. ABC, abstain, be faithful, use condom to prevent. Thank you, Angela. Next class. Jared, enjoy your day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. See you next time. We learn about ARVs, babies. Nyongeza, bye. Have a nice week, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, my voice, Jared. Okay, I will. Nice week too. Magovi, thank you. Enjoy your day, Angela. Thank you. Condom management, Haruna Idi, I don't know what you mean. Thank you, Hopkins. John Kinanja, have a good day. And next week. Bethel Kemoi, thank you.